Hi and welcome to Social Media for Small Business. I'm Susie Daphnis, here with my co-host Kat Matson. Coming up today, we are looking at South by Southwest, the Austin-based technology conference. We have a great social media guest, and later on, this week's picks of great new social media applications.
Hi Susie, how are you going?
Great, we're here at South by Southwest. We've been here before. Let's tell people a little bit about what it is.
Yep. Well, it's the world's largest interactive media festival. I don't know much about the history, but I know that when I came last year, I just went back home just with my mind so significantly expanded about the space, about digital technology, gaming, social media, interactive media. So it's lived up to expectations again this year, and I'm having a ball.
So there's about 15 to 20,000 people from all over the world, and just to give people a sense of what it's about, there's sessions, there's over 2,600 speakers speaking on panels, individual presentations. There's big names like the head of Google+, the head of Living Social, there's...
Sean Parker. I'm sorry, it doesn't get much bigger than Sean Parker, but that's just me and my little...
But then there's just interesting people like Mark Wahlberg was here yesterday. Jimmy Fallon, the late night talk show host, was here.
Seth MacFarlane from The Family Guy was here.
So it's a real mixture. Oh, and there's a bunch of authors. There's people who we've talked about in past episodes of this show, and they're all here because we're talking about what's new, trends, technology, all those sorts of things. And we have a few Aussies along this time, which has been great. Tell me, what sort of trends have you been hearing in the sessions you've attended?
I've been focusing a lot on the branding and marketing sessions this time, and I shouldn't say less about the techie stuff, but more how do we actually use social media and interactive media in our marketing. One of the key trends that I'm seeing is that the industry, the social media industry, has matured. We're getting more sophisticated in our approach, and the speakers and the marketers are saying you need to think, surprisingly enough, before you jump into a platform. A great conversation yesterday about the future of social marketing. The panellists were all pretty much saying just because it's the new shiny thing, like Pinterest is the latest shiny thing, doesn't mean that you as a brand or a business have to be using it. There was actually quite a funny quip because somebody was saying that their CEO had called them and say, "This is the biggest thing that we've ever seen in social media, why aren't we there?" And the response was, because we're not selling to 35-year-old housewives in Kansas. You know, that's not where our target market's hanging out. So that's one of the key trends, get more strategic and get more thoughtful. And is it a key trend? Another thing that I'm really seeing is advanced uses in location, which it's funny, that was actually one of the things that I kind of was getting excited about last year when I heard the founder of Foursquare speak, and it's great to see how that whole ambient location potential for marketing and for all sorts of things actually is now evolving. We've got the technology and the understanding to do it, so it's kind of cool. What are you seeing?
On location, again, I've been to a few sessions, but it's almost like not just location, but location now being smart and very personal. And so the applications are phenomenal of how that area could evolve and what opportunities there are. I too have been going to the branding and marketing sessions because that's my interest. And there's a couple of sessions I went to where the theme repeated, and it was about brands being more human-like. So being... making mistakes, being very real, being very transparent, but not in the way that perhaps we've heard, oh, yeah, you should be more transparent, which means let's pretend we're really friendly and actually we're not. Yeah. But it was more about having the experience of the user be your primary focus. What is that person experiencing when they interact with you on whatever platform in whatever way, and how do you make that more human? And so that was very powerful. There was another interesting session I went to which was talking about brands as patterns. And a pattern we identify as something that is predictable but different, because a pattern is usually unique in some way. Yeah. And what this was saying is that the best brands are predictable, you know what you're getting, but they'll always surprise and delight you with what they do. And so there was a lot that I took away from that.
Yeah, I attended that session. It was likewise, took a lot away from it, and that notion of something that can be expected, so there's comfort in it, without jarring and surprising, but still interesting enough to not be boring. Yeah.
Great. So, I mean, and we're just sort of touching the very tip of what we've been learning here at South by Southwest. So, one of the things that we did a little early on today is we had a chance to speak to a wonderful gentleman named Joe Paluzzi. Tell us a little bit about him.
I came across Joe in one of the sessions. He's the founder of the Content Marketing Institute, and he was co-facilitating a panel with Jay Bayer, who is an author. Both of them very, very passionate about brands being publishers of good content, and basically their position is that if brands and businesses now actually need to become publishers as good as, if not better, the leading industry magazine for your industry. So yeah, when I heard Joe speak and he was talking about the Content Marketing Institute, I thought we had to get him onto the show because he talked in the session a lot about the issues that I hear from small businesses when they say, I don't have the time, I can't do content, we don't like blogging, what have we got to say, there's nothing interesting about us, and Joe answered all of those. So Joe Paluzzi, he's the founder of the Content Marketing Institute, and yeah, let's have a look at what he had to say. Joe, welcome to the Social Media for Small Business podcast. Thank you for joining us. You had a great session yesterday about content and why content is so important. Tell us, why is content so important in small business and in social media marketing?
Well, I think small businesses haven't thought about the idea that they need to think and act more like media companies, more like publishers today, especially small businesses. It's like we're very used to doing things the way we've done it for a long, long time, but nobody ever said that we had to create compelling, relevant content on a consistent basis. But oh, by the way, now we have to do that today. So we're seeing this whole momentum around this idea of content marketing. It's the idea that businesses of any sizes, but small businesses in general, I think have a real opportunity to become the trusted leader in whatever niche they serve. And if you do that through content, through what all channels you might have access to, targeting your audience, you can get that attention, you can get that interest, you can build that relationship, and ultimately the goal is to attract and retain more customers.
Okay. You mentioned that it's a great opportunity to become like an industry leader in your field. But media companies get paid for creating content. Small businesses get paid for selling things. How do we bridge that gap? How do we monetize the content?
Well, I think we all realize that traditional advertising is not nearly as effective as it could be. Now, it's not going away, but it's definitely under struggling times right now with how that's going. So what we really want to figure out is, from a small business perspective, yes, you're not going to be paid for that content and you're not advertising around that content. But if you want to be interesting and you want to use all those channels at your disposal, whether that's social media channels or you want to be found on search engines or you want to drive leads in whatever way, how are you going to do it if you don't have a compelling story behind you? I honestly don't know the answer to that. So I think a lot of small businesses struggle because they go to market traditionally, and they're doing, they're doing ads of whatever kind. They're going to trade shows and they're focusing on referrals and whatever. And those are still important, but probably the most powerful referral there is somebody sharing your content online or going to a search engine and finding your content. And the only way to do that is if that content is compelling and it's not a sales pitch. So you've got to make sure that that content is as good or better than any content in your industry. And if you do that, then you can get that attention that you want, or you can build your customer relationship for the long term.
Okay. Just stabilise for our listeners, what do we mean by content, as distinct to, say, just posting anecdotes on Facebook or Twitter?
So content can be so many different channels. So let's look at traditional channels. You might say, oh, well, I can create a custom magazine for my customers. I can do an e-newsletter. I can do a print magazine. And now you get into social. Well, yes, I can do blogging content. I can link that blogging content up with Twitter and Facebook. Now there's SlideShare on the B2B side. There's Pinterest if you have visual storytelling. You have webinars. You have webcasts. I mean, you have so many different types of channels available. So what are you going to put in those channels? So you have those channels at your disposal, and you may be taking email names, and you maybe getting your information from your customers. But at the end of the day, it better be something compelling, and that better be focused on the pain points solve the pain points of your customers, or they're going to ignore it. Because your customer, I think as a small business, you have to realize that your customers don't care about you. They don't care about what you're selling. They care about themselves and their own pain points. How do you get your customers to care about you? You get your customer to care about you by talking about things that are important to them. Then that's really what media companies do. I mean, that's why you subscribe to a magazine or you opt into a website online. It's because, boy, I really want that information. It's going to help me in my career or in my job. You have to do that as a small business today, and I know we're not used to doing that, but it's almost a prerequisite now for getting into any kind of business.
It's daunting because I know that as small businesses, not only do we not have the money that the media companies have, but we also don't have the time. What are your tips for small businesses who are saying, I don't have the time to be creating this content?
Well, the wonderful thing about content marketing is really the ultimate David versus Goliath. I mean, I think that so a Goliath in your industry can outspend you in media. But from a content perspective, you can be nimble, you can be flexible, you can create blogging content, you can leverage your employees, you can leverage your customers to create that content. Really what you need is you need somebody in your organization that has a nose for the story. That's a good storyteller. Then they have that person work with your customers or your various stakeholders in the organization to get that content. And that can be customers as well, can be a great source of that. You can move faster and quicker than anyone else in your industry if you're a small business. I really believe that. And if you do that, you create an audience online, you have them share that. Obviously, sharing is much more important in search engine and Google algorithms. You can take over an industry if you focus small enough. And I think that's where a lot of small businesses get into trouble because they go wide. They're like, oh, well, we're in the accounting industry, so I want to cover everything accounting related. No, you don't. I mean, focus on what is your real core competency and where can you be the leading expert in the world. And the business needs to think about that because, and that's a tough question to answer. Where can you be the leading expert in the world? And that's the content that you want to create. And a small business, actually, it's mostly time. I think that there's a lot of resources out there. There's journalists, there's storytellers, there's writers, there's editors that are willing to help you. But a lot of this can be done, and it's much more cost effective than traditional marketing.
Cool. You head up the Content Marketing Institute. Can you just give us a brief rundown of what that does? And can that be a resource to small businesses listening to this podcast?
So we created the Content Marketing Institute because this thing is not easy, as you pointed out. It's tough to scale this type of, so we have to think and act more like publishers. We're used to thinking and acting like regular businesses that have traditional marketing departments with PR and now mobile and social and email, but it's always very siloed. Well, now we're saying, okay, well, you've got to create content in a different way. So we really focus at the Content Marketing Institute about how to do this. How do you really make this happen for your business? And we do that through Chief Content Officer Magazine, and there is an Australian version of CCO Magazine. We do that through Content Marketing World, which is our large event held every September in the Midwest in the United States. And we do that through daily content. Every day we create a piece of content, and we're trying to teach marketers actually how to do this for their business. So I think hopefully it is a great resource.
Okay, cool. I could talk with you about this for hours, but the listeners probably don't want to listen to that conversation for hours. So I'm going to wrap up with a question that we ask all of our guests. What is your favourite social media app or tool or platform, and why is that one your favourite?
So I would always preface that with what's your business. So if you, yeah, my favorite is SlideShare. That's my favorite tool because it's so underused. And SlideShare, so if you're not familiar with SlideShare, SlideShare is like the YouTube for PowerPoint presentations. So what we're trying to teach a lot of our clients and customers and readers about is the idea of visual storytelling. We all know about textual storytelling. We all do blogs. We all do e-newsletters. We know text is important. What we want to do is, what if you took that and you created some kind of a visual presentation on that, like you can do in PowerPoint or Prezi or whatever the case is, and then load that and present that at SlideShare. It's great for search engine optimization and SlideShare actually has millions of people that actually look for PowerPoint. Who knew that people would actually go and search for presentations? They actually do. And if you can take your story and actually add an element of visual storytelling, I think SlideShare would help, and it's especially strong for B2B. It's overwhelmingly strong.
I was going to say, just in that one tip, you've answered the question of the time, because I know so many businesses are doing presentations anyway, so they just share it on SlideShare.
Think about it this way. We always say, oh, we're going to tell a story, we're going to do a blog. Well, instead of just telling one story, say, how can I tell that same story in Pinterest, in SlideShare, on Facebook, on Twitter, in my e-newsletter, in my print magazine, and leverage and distribute that and reimagine that content through all the different distribution outlets. We always think for, one channel. It's not the case anymore. Your customers are engaging with you on all these different channels, so reimagine turn that story a little bit so that you can get the most out of those channels.
Fantastic. Joe, thank you so much again for joining us and for taking the time out of a very busy South by schedule. And maybe we'll get to see you in Australia in the not too distant future.
Well, we're really looking at the possibility of a Content Marketing World Australia, and we hope to do that sometime in 2013. So everybody keep your fingers crossed, and maybe we'll make it happen.
Awesome. Thank you. That was great. One of the things that I really enjoyed about Joe is his notion of repurposing content, basically. And I've now heard it a couple of different times from different people. Your presentations, your PowerPoint presentations are content, and likewise a blog post can be very easily turned into a visual medium like a PowerPoint, and then you put it up on SlideShare. So yeah, lots to take out of that interview.
I didn't see the session that Joe was in, but I attended another one called Brands as Publishers. And similarly, it was about every brand has an obligation to publish in whatever format relevant information for their audience. And having that information not be at all about the company, but whatever might be a great experience for the customer. And Red Bull was used as an example of someone who gets it absolutely right. But most corporations will not get it right because they see those platforms, those social platforms, as a way to broadcast more content about their great new cookie.
Yeah, one of the themes that I'm hearing a lot about too is storytelling. So both the story of the history of you and your business and your brand, but also the storytelling that's actually going to connect with consumers. So again, not that broadcasting just to say it's all about us. In fact, one guy was saying it's not about me, it's about them, like individually. So that the storytelling, and actually Red Bull's a great example of how they do that because they really connect with their audience every time.
So just before we go to our favourite applications, and this, if there's anywhere in the world to find great new social apps, it's social media. It's right here on Social Media for Small Business. I want to let you know how to get in touch with us. You can write to us at social media. I can't remember the name of our social media podcast at abn.org.au. One of the things about South by Southwest is that they're very long days, and if you go partying, they're very long days.
Yeah, and even if you don't go partying, I'm not going to admit either way, but even if you don't go partying, because there is so much information and so many people, you do start losing little bits of your mind.
So social media podcast at abn.org.au. We'd love to hear from you. So app of the week or app of this episode, what are you going to choose for this time?
App of the episode has, for me, is a little one called Highlight. You put it on your phone. It hooks up with your Facebook account. And basically what it does then is it lets you know when interesting people are nearby. And by nearby, I mean literally within, seems to be like a 10-metre radius. So, for example, I'm getting notifications of, so-and-so is nearby. And you look at their details and it says, well, you both like these different pages on Facebook. You might have a couple of friends in common. You're interested in whatever. It comes up with a photo that's obviously been pulled from Facebook. And you can decide whether you want to message the person or whether you want to just highlight them and kind of just see if you bump into them again. Now, at an event like this, it's kind of weird because the possibilities for similarities and for common interest is quite broad. Like I've had a lot of people who I actually have nothing in common with other than we all follow like the same 15 pages on Facebook. What I like about this one though is that, for example, back home when I'm not surrounded by thousands of people, what it would actually do is it would let me know if one of my friends was nearby but I hadn't seen them. If I was at an event, I'd be able to go, oh, there's Susie, I must catch up with her. The other thing that I quite like about it is the potential for business applications. So at the moment, it's a social app, it's running off Facebook. What if it was to run off LinkedIn? And so at a networking function where you haven't been before, you're actually getting notifications of people who maybe work in a similar industry, maybe at a similar decision-making level. Just the potential, I guess, for that business layer in that social, like again, it's that location thing. It's the ambient location where you're getting notifications of things that are in your area that might be of interest to you. So yeah, Highlight's my app. It's well worth checking out. I've turned it off because it was killing my battery, because it was constantly giving me so many notifications about who's nearby. But that's kind of because I'm hanging out in a place where there's, what did you say, nearly 20,000 people. So yeah, there's going to be some people here with similar interests.
It's interesting with apps when they have a great social element, but then you think, well, how is this really useful to me? And I guess that's what you're saying. Well, if it was LinkedIn and it was a business context, then that's really useful to know that, there's someone else who, likes, Justin Bieber page or whatever pages you might like, Kate.
Yeah. Well, I just... Justin Bieber. One of the things I think too that I start getting quite excited about, if not a little bit daunted, is what we're learning about Google Plus, for example, is that the reason Google developed Google Plus wasn't so much about a social network; it was what they call a social layer across all of their properties. The reason they want to be doing that is because they want to be giving us ads that are meaningful based on our search history and what we do when we're in YouTube and so on. So then an app like Highlight that is maybe accessing that Google layer could be quite powerful, because it is literally informing, Kat, did you know that you're nearby a coffee shop that actually sells really nice coffee? By the way, they don't do good coffee here. So that option is fantastic, I think. There's a bit of sound checking going on in the background.
I have the best app.
Okay.
The best app. Okay. So one of my frustrations with social is that what I post is out there, but I don't have a copy of it. And even if I want to go into the archives and find a tweet, I knew there was a link to an article that I posted X months ago, I can't find it. So there's an app called Social Safe that actually allows you to download, I think even in CSV files, your data. So now you can archive it, you can kind of have ownership of it that you couldn't before.
Well, and you can reuse it. If you can archive it and put it into an Excel spreadsheet, like in a CSV file, that means that you can then use it again, because I did that 6 months ago, I can do it again.
So very exciting. So that's Social Safe, and we'll put the links up on our show notes. Now, if you're new to this program, our show notes are any links to articles we've mentioned, people we've mentioned, applications we've mentioned, will all appear on our website alongside this track. So you can find that at abn.org.au. Just look under the podcast link. In wrapping up for today, anything you'd like to leave us with?
Watch Google Plus. Just watch Google Plus. I learned a lot in that session, and I've actually now, because I'm here in the States, when I went to a Google page the other day on my laptop, and I actually got a Google Search Your World result. So basically I got my search results, and then over on the right hand side of the screen I got, and people in your network have said these things about what you've just searched for. So that is extraordinary. South by Southwest is fantastic, and I think anybody who's listening to this podcast and who does have a role in social media beyond just the enjoyment factor, seriously have a look at coming over. It's actually not that expensive for the information that you get, and I would love to see more Aussies over here next year.
Yeah, me too. The quality of thinking that happens at a conference like this, unfortunately because of our small population, will not be duplicated. And so absolutely do yourself a favour and join us next March at South by Southwest. Thank you so much for listening and watching, and we'll see you next time on Social Media for Small Business.